Barack Hussein Obama, currently holding the office of President of the United States, represents a clear and present danger to the people of the United States. His specific violations of our Constitution, in addition to his actions in furtherance of conspiracies to commit further heinous crimes, make him eligible for immediate impeachment and removal from office. In fact, if these measures are not pursued immediately, the damage to the United States and its citizens and humanity as a whole will be irreparable, including through the provocation of nuclear war. Those who argue that this president's misconduct has not risen to the constitutional level of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors are either delusional or incorrigibly corrupt. Obama's offenses have already gone far beyond those of President Richard Nixon, whose bills of impeachment recounted how he had acted in a manner contrary to his trust as president and subversive of constitutional government, to the great prejudice of the cause of law and justice, and to the manifest injury of people of the United States. Prestigious lawyers, including Bruce Fein and Professor Francis Boyle, have already stepped forward to offer their services in drafting bills of impeachment against Obama. It is a matter of utmost urgency that leading political circles, as well as the U.S. population, take the necessary action to get Congress to act. Along with articles of impeachment, we must simultaneously move with Section 4 of the 25th Amendment. Even before the following list of high crimes were committed, it had already been identified by Mr. Larouche in April of 2009 that President Obama's psychology was that of a pathological narcissist that would drive him to heinous criminal acts. The Cabinet must move with the 25th Amendment to put an immediate stop to President Obama's acts of insanity, specifically his drive to trigger nuclear World War III. Both the 25th Amendment and impeachment must be pursued. Here, we provide a draft outline for a formal bill of impeachment. Count 1. Violation of the constitutional provision that Congress has the unique responsibility to declare war, as well as of the 1973 War Powers Resolution. Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution grants to the Congress the power to declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and make rules concerning captures on land and water. Reports on the discussions in the Constitutional Convention reveal that the founders were particularly concerned that the ability to be able to declare war not be lodged exclusively in the executive, as it was in the British monarchy. Yet, in violation of this article and of the procedure set up under the War Powers Resolution of 1973 for notification of the Congress and obtaining its subsequent approval, President Barack Obama went ahead with the war against the nation of Libya in March of 2011. While Obama notified the Congress of the action, no vote of approval was ever sought or obtained. And not only did he ignore the legal counsel of both the Department of Justice and the Department of Defense, he sent State Department legal advisor Harold Koh to lie to the U.S. Congress, claiming that the limited nature of this particular mission is not the kind of hostilities envisioned by the War Powers Resolution, arguing that since unmanned drones were being used to conduct strikes instead of manned planes, the operation was not within the definition of hostilities. This sophistry constitutes at least evasion of the truth, if not contempt of Congress bordering on outright perjury, since the intention from the beginning of operations was clearly regime change, as was admitted by spokesman for NATO following the murder of Gaddafi. And when this disregard for constitutional procedure and separation of powers was called to question in federal court by a suit filed by several members of the United States Congress, it was dismissed by the judiciary on the very day that Gaddafi was killed, in blatant violation of the rights of the legislature to check the abuse of powers of the executive. It is clear that the president's commitment of military forces in Libya never conformed to conditions set forward in the War Powers Resolution, including self-defense. In fact, the whole operation has been ultimately shown to have been a preemptive aggressive war in pursuit of regime change, as explicitly condemned as a war crime by the post-World War II Nuremberg Tribunal. For these high crimes and misdemeanors, And before he applies this precedent again, Barack Obama must be impeached. Count 2. Violation of the Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. The Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution declares that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. President Barack Obama has violated this provision of the Constitution flagrantly with the avowed assassination of at least 3 American citizens, Anwar al-Awlaki, his 16-year-old son, and Samir Khan, without benefit of due process of law. Indeed, the death warrants against these individuals were effectively signed in secret by a committee overseen by the president. In fact, there are 3 separate kill lists maintained by the Obama administration: the National Security Council, the CIA, and the Joint Special Operations Command. The decisions as to who is put on these lists are made in secret, with no public record and no law justifying or governing its existence. It is highly likely that other American citizens have also been summarily executed in like fashion through the president-sanctioned program of deploying drones against individuals alleged to be terrorists who were hit while in the company of other unknown persons. At least one report has been leaked about U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan having been killed in such a way. For these high crimes and misdemeanors, and before more such extrajudicial executions take place, Barack Obama must be impeached. Count 3. Violation of the Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. The Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution declares the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. President Barack Obama has violated this provision of the U.S. Constitution by continuing and even expanding the Bush-Cheney administration's program of warrantless interception by the National Security Agency of the electronic communications of millions of Americans. For this high crime and misdemeanor, Barack Obama must be impeached. Count 4. Conspiracy to commit crimes against humanity. In 1946, the United States subscribed to the definition of crimes against humanity utilized by the Nuremberg Military Tribunal, which read as follows: murder, extermination, enslavement, deportation, and other inhumane acts committed against any civilian population, whether or not in violation of the domestic law of the country where perpetrated. This standard was applied to medical care, with the inclusion of systematic undernutrition and inadequate provision of surgical and medical services. President Barack Obama, through his promotion of a health care reform which explicitly calls for cutting the costs of medical care by either denying services, pricing them in such a way as to reduce their usage, or penalizing overutilization, has conspired to carry out mass murder through the denial of medical care to those considered to have lives not worthy to be lived. The standard of know or should have known, also coined in the trials of the Nuremberg Tribunal, applies strictly in this case. In addition to denying care through non-payment for certain categories of the population, especially the elderly and poor who are enrolled in Medicare and Medicaid, Obamacare is reducing reimbursements to medical and surgical facilities, as well as physicians, with the predictable result of denying medical services to a population in need. For his action to commit these crimes against humanity, Barack Obama must be impeached. Count 5. Conspiracy to violate the separation of powers provision of the U.S. Constitution. Title I, Section 7 of the U.S. Constitution mandates that all bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives. Section 8 declares that the Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. Despite this mandate, President Obama has taken the powers of the Hitlerian unitary executive to preempt the powers of the Congress in economic policy on behalf of imposing fascist austerity measures. The most recent and flagrant example is the so-called Budget Control Act, which sets up a super Congress to usurp the powers of the House over economic policy, even denying Congress the ability to amend decisions made by a committee of 12, along with Obama. The establishment of the super Congress follows the same pattern of usurpation Obama pioneered with his proposal for an independent payment advisory board to dictate the terms for what medical procedures are to be covered and what they should cost. In the name of removing decisions from politics, Obama would prevent Congress from defending the general welfare and implement policies like those carried out by Adolf Hitler's non-political panel of experts at Tiergarten 4, the center of the 1939-41 euthanasia program that resulted in the mass death of the disabled and elderly. For this high crime, Barack Obama must be impeached. Count 6. Conspiracy to commit the United States to an international genocide policy. Under the principles developed by the U.S.-initiated and supported Nuremberg Military Tribunal after World War II, genocide was determined to be a crime against humanity. Among the measures determined to lead to genocide was population reduction, no matter under what pretext and criteria it was carried out. President Obama, by wholeheartedly embracing the green genocide agenda of low technology and depopulation, which was promoted by the British monarchy at the 2009 Copenhagen Climate Summit, has conspired with that monarchy and its agents to carry out genocide against large sections of the world's population. President Obama's appointed science advisor, John Holdren, is an active advocate of population reduction by, among other things, involuntary mass sterilization, but in particular by denying the world the right to nuclear power. President Obama has simultaneously acted to sabotage the life-saving scientific capacities of the United States, including by canceling NASA's manned space program and refusing to fund life-saving satellite remote sensing programs required in today's intensified extreme weather events, actions which will inevitably lead to accelerated death rates among the world's population within the United States and without. For this high crime, Barack Obama must be impeached. Count 7. Conspiracy to destroy the sovereignty of the United States. Article 3, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution defines treason against the United States as only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. President Barack Obama meets that standard by acting to cede U.S. sovereign powers to institutions loyal to the British Empire and supranational institutions such as the International Monetary Fund. As early as April 2009, President Obama agreed to IMF demands to expand special drawing rights as a means of strengthening the IMF and de facto weakening the U.S. dollar. In August of this year, when European interbank lending froze, it was the U.S. Federal Reserve that opened an emergency discount window, and it was in this context that President Obama pledged to German Chancellor Angela Merkel that the United States would be the lender of last resort for the European Monetary Union. President Obama has also continued the Bush administration's massive looting of taxpayer dollars to be sent into the bottomless pit of the international financial institutions, including, but not limited to, the Royal Bank of Scotland and other inter-alpha banks, thus indebting and sacrificing the lives and livelihoods of U.S. citizens to support institutions dedicated to the British Empire and thus dedicated to destroying the Constitution of the United States. For this high crime, bordering on treason, Barack Obama must be impeached. These are only the crimes which President Obama has already committed. With his pathological narcissism driving him towards greater and greater acts of cruelty and violence, it is imperative that he be removed from office now. With Congress doing nothing to stop President Obama's illegal actions in Libya, this president is now involved in pursuing, on behalf of the British Empire, regime change in Syria and/or Iran, an action that will trigger World War III, intended as a nuclear confrontation with the nations of Russia, China, and others. To stop thermonuclear World War III, President Obama must be impeached.